to Drummers Only Radio. Drummers Only is the UK's leading drum shop with store locations in Glasgow and Leeds. Our podcasts are full of interviews, gear reviews, and much more from the unique perspective of a drum shop. The show is hosted by two pasty Scottish dudes who talk real fast. Whoa, slow down there, Braveheart. So here's Chris, the Glasgow shop manager, and Adam, the social media manager. Be sure to like, subscribe, and let's do this.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. How are you? Thank you for tuning in, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or wherever you find your entertainment these days. This is Drummers Only Radio, and we're here with the doodliest of dudes, the YouTube and amazing drumming sensation, Myrie, I believe is how you say it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the best that's ever been said. Thank you, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. How are you?
I'm thriving. This is the earliest I've ever been awake, as I was telling you a second ago. So who knows where we'll go in this conversation. It's such a twilight hour. It's 11:30 a.m. in America right now, dude.
Well, it's 5:30 p.m. in the UK. It's raining, but we're inside, so it's sunshine and rainbows.
When's the last time you saw the sun over there, dude?
Yesterday. It was a decent day yesterday till about 4 p.m. and then it darkened out a bit. But yesterday was quite nice. It's just cold, man. It's just cold and grey and wet.
Okay. The story we tell ourselves over here is that it's just like perpetually cloudy over there. And this is why you guys have the personality that you have.
Yeah, when we get about the week of summer that we get every 2 years up here, yeah, it can get bleak. We had snow like 2 weeks ago.
Man, the last time I was in your country was in August of 2018.
Really?
And we had these long drives between cities, and something like chemically happened in my brain seeing the countryside where like probably, you know, where they filmed like Monty Python and the Holy Grail and all this. Like I was very, very inspired by that landscape. But and so I thought like it would be beautiful to be around this all the time, dude.
Well, it is, but the problem is that, you know, if you're in the rat race in any way, shape or form, you don't see it very often. And like we're in Glasgow, which is the biggest city in Scotland, and sort of 30 minutes in any direction is beautiful, beautiful scenery, just gorgeous. But you're busy doing stuff, huh? You know, and so you don't take the time to go and see it as much as one should. But whenever sort of fellow Americans or Canadians or people come across, they're like, your country's amazing. And it really is amazing, especially if you go further up north in Scotland. It's really spectacular.
Right on. Well, even the kids at the show, man, I don't like my memories of the gig. I'll have to look up where we played. Would you recognize it if I dug it out of my camera?
Yeah. Like,
all right. I'll do this before the conversation is over. But I remember the two things I'll never forget, man, are number one, the sound man. I was like, I wish we could take this guy everywhere, dude. It's like, because culturally, that I don't know, like the culture of like where you come from and who you are, this affects how you do like a sound check. Do you know what I'm saying? That guy was hilarious and very pragmatic, very to the point, but like lighthearted all at the same time. But also I remember the kids that came out like really give a shit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in Scotland, there's countless bands come through Glasgow and tell you it's the best city to play in the world. Yeah. You know, and I think it's just Glasgow's great at laughing at itself. It just doesn't take itself way too seriously, and you will be humbled real quick in Glasgow. You know, if you're they call it like tall poppy syndrome, where if the poppies get too high, they just cut the heads off them. You know, it's kind of like that. You know, just like know your station, know where you are, and you'll be fine.
Dude, I think that's what I was feeling, and it made me want to lean into that and like spend more time there. By the way, the name of the venue was Broadcast.
Oh yeah. On Sauchiehall Hill Street. Yeah, I know that venue.
Go.
Yeah. It's a small room, dingy, downstairs.
Dude, it must have been 120 people. It was like amazing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
rammed, yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're unfamiliar with Harry, you need to pull yourself from out the rock under which you lie, because he's all over the internet. But you've played with some Nashville artists, Locash, Hardy, Claire Bowen, who's sort of widely famous for the Nashville TV show, and actually came through Glasgow when the cast did the tour. So she was here. You're a graduate of Berklee School of Music. Did Berklee prep you for Nashville?
Man, all these Berklee dudes that are in Nashville now, I never knew them in Boston. They like come out of the woodwork here all these years later. And so there must be some connection between that school and what happens in Nashville, in that you're constantly digesting a bunch of music the whole time you're there. And you're like spinning a lot of plates all at the same time. And Nashville is very sideman-y in that way. I don't know any drummers here who aren't working for 12 artists at the same time
Right.
until they get like the career gig, you know?
Yeah.
And Berkeley was that way. Everybody was in everybody else's band, and you're hearing a lot of different stuff and learning music all the time and trying to keep a lot of that stuff in your head. So in that sense, the way you kind of bubble up with your peers, I think there's a connection to Nashville there, but I don't remember the word Nashville being said by any of the profs or any of the like academic infrastructure there. You know what I'm saying? Like music and academia is like so theoretical, even at Berkeley, that in hindsight, I've kind of been thinking that you have to know what you want out of that. You have to have a vision for what you want when you get out of college, and then you can tailor what you're learning to that. But if you just go in there and say, yeah, turn me into a musician, you're just going to learn like a bunch of textbook information and then go work at Dunkin' Donuts, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've done the music college thing, and the number of, especially where I went to school, there was a lot of classical musicians, and if you don't have a pathway already carved out, or you don't think like that, that's exactly what's going to happen to these people. And I don't think music schools are very vocational. They don't teach you how to go out and get gigs and keep gigs. And in some respects, they don't necessarily teach you to work with other people. I think it's really, depends on the course you do. But it's like the classical course, it's all like you study your principal instrument and then they put you in an orchestra, but they don't teach you about hustling and about life.
I know, man. It's like, I guess that just happens between classes, right? And I can recognize that a little more now than I did at the time. But I do know, I knew from a young age that when I wanted to go there, the dudes I wanted to study with were the guys who like had lives that I wanted to live. I mean, just off the top of my head, Rod Morgenstein, he was in the band Winger. And
Dixie
Mike
Dregs as well.
Yes, he was in the Dregs too, a founding member of the Dixie Dregs. And Mike Mangini was there too. He left when he started working on Dream Theater. But so at that time that I wanted to study with him, he was like, we kind of knew him as Steve Vai's drummer. And those dudes, I thought, they know what it's like to, they know what it like smells like inside a tour bus or whatever. The answer is it smells very unpleasant, by the way. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to be around them and absorb, and like the curriculum did not provide for what I wanted to know, but when you sit around with them before class or after class, you can ask them anything you want. That like so much of the value of going to a place like that comes out of those moments. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's funny when the best lessons you get are in the pub.
Dude, there it is. Exactly.
You know, it's not about how quickly or cleanly you play a paradiddle. It's about how you're not a dick on the tour bus.
Yeah. Amen.
I just wish that sometimes colleges would do that for people. They would let people know that there's some sort of class where you can go and take. I just hear these guys tell stories about how to get by. You know?
Yeah. Dude, this is my gripe with music school too. It's like a combination of the, you know, like the school is a little bit responsible for this, and then what we ask for is also a little bit responsible too. But I recognize what you're saying about going to a school full of classical musicians where you get super honed at reading sheet music or something, and then you're like, now what?
Yeah.
And I went to a school like that and had a similar experience. And in fact, that's the worst relationship I ever had with music is when I went into a school like that. So I feel lucky. The other thing that makes me feel lucky about college is that maybe you didn't mean for me to talk this much about college, but halfway through when I did college in 2 1.5 spurts. And late in the first 1.5 I had a band, and our music was circulating on MySpace, which I realized like super dates us. And we had a song that started to do pretty well, and so we could fly out on the weekends and go play little shows at places like Broadcast, and where like I don't think more than 120 kids were ever coming to see us at that time, but we like that was like rock stardom to us. And so when we signed our record deal, like 1.5 into me going to college, I basically had to choose: am I going to stay in college and let that opportunity pass, or am I going to like travel the world for the first time with my friends and like go after this thing that I thought I wanted to do my whole life? So I did ask guys like Rod, and they're like, dude, college is going to be here. If you ever need to come back to this place, you can. We're not going anywhere. So go, take the bird in the fist, man. So I left. I dropped out of college and got absolutely whooped by the music reality. You know, my band got crushed in the time that we were out there trying to do it. And it was one of my favorite chapters of my life. And when the band went down in flames, I came back to college as an old man in shame. I was probably 24 or something when I came back, which is like huge. That age gap is huge if you're around a bunch of 18-year-olds. And but when I came back, dude, that's the most I ever got out of college was the second year and a half stint, because I went and got my ass kicked for a while, and then when I came back, I knew what I wanted to know, dude. Like I had an experiential tapestry to put this academic access up against, you know what I'm saying? So like I thrived in college in the second half, and that made me think, man, I wish it was more okay for people to live for a while and then go to college after getting whooped a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I studied music I started when I was 28. So nice. I was like 10 years, and I wasn't actually, there was only 6 people in my class, because it was a jazz music program, and the idea was that the 6 people formed an ensemble. So there was 3 the rhythm section and 3 horns, and I wasn't the oldest either. So there was like, I think one of my colleagues was like mid-30s when he started. 2 kids, you know, had lived a life, but you're studying with guys who are 10 plus years younger than you, who, you know, have to live through a lot of that, and it can be weirdly frustrating that they think the Wednesday night gig for 30 quid is important, you know, because they haven't gone through what you had gone through, or I had lived a bit of life beforehand and seen that it's really, in the grand scheme of it, not that important. And when I was there, I did this sort of internship with an enterprise charity in Scotland that got students to be enterprising and entrepreneurial. And I would like hijack conversations in the lunch hall and just be like, so what are you going to do when you graduate? And all the actors would be like, well, I'm going to go and act. I was like, well, if that doesn't work out, what are you going to do? And they would look at you like you had 5 heads, because of course it's going to work out. But they don't think about like all of last year's graduates that came out that aren't working, the year before's graduates, the year before that's graduates, the 10 years ago, plus every other graduate school who's putting actors out into the world for these very, very finite number of jobs. And you get people starting to think about, okay, well, like, can I do what they call like 5-minute theatre and take that to kids and teach kids about like, don't do drugs. And instead of working in Starbucks, they're actually honing their craft in a different way. But there's like very few people can think like that, and colleges don't teach it. And I think it should be one of these things that they teach you to think about it in an alternative way. Like, I don't know that you would have learned the YouTube thing at college. You had to figure that out, right?
Yeah, the word YouTube didn't get said in college either. I know what you're saying.
So then that becomes a hustle that you figure out on your own that can help you whilst the gigs aren't bountiful.
Man, boy, my brain is going a lot of places as you say all that stuff. I kind of the lily pad that I end up on as you say all this stuff is, I guess, like, the people that are just, I'm not talking about me, by the way, but I'm talking about people that I look up to. The people that are going to make it happen is like, they're just sort of determined to do that regardless, right? Because I know, even as you were saying, like, you'd ask these people, like, all right, what are you going to do when you get out of here? They go, well, of course, I'm going to act. That's how this works. I do what I'm told, and then I become an actor, right? That's how that works. I do think a lot of the musicians I look up to, like, yeah, they just quietly knew that it was going to, which at moments maybe seems delusional. Like, yeah, I'm just going to be a musician. What are you talking about? That's all there is. Like, there is something, there's like this nice momentum or vector that comes out of just blindly being like, I don't know if this is a dumb idea or not, but this is the only thing I'm thinking about. I'm just going to be a musician. And then some combination of that tenacity, but also, I guess, longevity maybe is the other component, the willingness to bang your head on that concrete over and over again forever. Like, eventually it sticks. Maybe on some level I identify this way too, that just all the luck that's come my way has just managed to hang on by a fingernail and not go bankrupt or something. And then finally one of those tin cans rolled my way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It's funny because I was listening to your Drumeo podcast, the Drumeo Gab one you did, and you were talking about what you put out versus what you get back. Mm-hmm. and talking about sort of paying karmic bills and things. And it's like some people it just doesn't happen for them, and they're putting out all the good. You know, they're positive people. They're working hard. They worked hard at their craft. They're actually physically very good at their craft, but maybe they don't have the right T-shirt on at the audition, or they brought the wrong ride cymbal that day, and the artist doesn't like. Do you know what I'm saying? And it just like that sucks, man. And they don't have a way to negotiate around it.
Dig. And that's why in my mind, the solution is like, okay, go to 300 of those auditions and see like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. But you've got to be built for that, right?
Totally. And then back to the determination thing. I don't mean to, I can sort of speak my own experience of that, but I'm not really trying to talk about me. I more see it in like the people that I look up to. But, the musicians that I know that are really like unwaveringly dedicated to this stuff don't care at all that they have to go to 300. They get to go to 300 auditions. They're like, right. Of course. And I was reflecting on this yesterday, just thinking about, because I forget from time to time that this is documented in some of my old videos, and so people bring it up to me from time to time. Like I used to go to Kroger and buy on Tuesdays or something, you could buy 5 bags of frozen vegetables for 20 cents, 5 for $1. Yeah. That made them 20 cents each. And like, that was my meal. It was just like, I would microwave some frozen vegetables, dude. And, when I think about doing that now, I'm like, oh, that sounds like suffering. But I remember that at the time, I didn't even notice I was doing that because I was thinking about the drums, man. It was like, I could not live in a universe where I wasn't just playing the drums. And so it wasn't frictional at all. I was just doing it. And every audition that came around, I've put a ton of pressure on myself, but and every audition felt like it was the last opportunity I was ever going to get. But there was I never remember having the feeling of like, man, if they don't hire me for this gig, I have to quit the drums, like, and just go work at Kmart or something. That never crossed my mind. I knew that even if I was going to earn below the poverty line for my entire life, that I was just going to do it forever. And and that makes me, you can tell I'm confused about whether I've won the lottery or whether I have anything to do with it. But I can tell mathematically, looking back on all these years, that even the gig that I'm on now is like largely a product of just, I managed to be some sort of cockroach surviving the nuclear holocaust. I just barely managed to not have to work at Foot Locker or something. And I hung on, and enough, I just feel like, if you take care of your craft or whatever, there's enough room for everybody. If it's good, well, likewise with YouTube, if you can just make some good stuff, there's enough room for it.
Yeah, I dig. I remember listening to Mark, and I'm not trying to be a glass half empty guy, because quite clearly you're a glass half full guy. But Mark Juliana talking about why he didn't want to identify himself as just a drummer, because there's going to be one day where he wakes up and doesn't want to play the drums.
Yeah,
because there's pressure comes with that too, but it's all down to how you manage it, I guess.
This is another trait of, like, you saying that rings that bell in my brain. This is another trait of musicians that I look up to, that it can be disguised sometimes, even like under the umbrella of just being a drummer. There's no doubt that the whole theme of our conversation here kind of is like maximizing on the numbers, right? Maximizing on the opportunities. 300 auditions is going to get you more lottery tickets than 10 auditions, right? And so almost to me, the equivalent of what Mark is saying is that, yeah, if you're not just a drummer, if there are many ways that you contribute creative value to the music world, then like that's just that many more lottery tickets or something, right? You know what I'm saying? And so, so within drumming, it might be one thing. I know one choice I had to make is like, it's one thing to be all in on one band, and your fate depends on whether that one band succeeds or not. When I moved to Nashville, it was like, dude, I played for everybody that called me, man. And it was like, I think that felt like the equivalent of, not hitching my wagon to one thing or something.
Would you hitch it again?
Would I hitch it again to one band now?
Yeah.
Every sideman in my I have two reactions to that. One is all of my friends who are even like the most successful side musicians I know, they all kind of, me included, we all sort of look out the window and salivate about like, yeah, but what would it be like to be in a band again, man?
Yeah.
And sometimes this manifests in the form of like a lot of side musicians that I really dig here. They actually do have bands that plays at, broadcasts on Tuesday night or the 5 spot here. And it's just a pet project, but deep down, it's also this like, oh my gosh, what if this could blow up? And then I don't have to play drums for Kenny Chesney anymore or whatever. That's a bad example because I'm not specifically referring to Kenny Chesney's drummer when I say that. But and likewise, man, I have little musical projects like that I work on and try and scratch that itch that don't get set. I'm on the biggest tour of my life right now. We opened with 2 sold out nights at Madison Square Garden a couple of months ago. It's running for 9 months all the way to the end of September. It's closing at Staples Center in Los Angeles. And I know that this is what I was visualizing when I was 13 years old, sitting in math class going like, oh man, I want to play the biggest shows on the planet. But I can also recognize from doing this that, I don't have any ownership of that music to kind of tie this into what we're talking about. Like, I am merely a bellhop for it. I am a mechanic that works on that car, or I'm some part of that vehicle, but I am not it. I am not the creator of it. You know what I'm saying? And so I have understood getting to this point, playing music professionally, that there's a different kind of satisfaction you can get between doing music at a high level and people appreciating that and like making your own thing that belongs to you and you're all in on that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That may not have directly answered what you're asking. Is just like, would you go all in on one thing anymore? I think that I have a little shelf that I can put my own, let's call it band stuff or creative stuff on, that my existence is essential to that and I have to do it. But my quality of life, financially is not dependent on that because I've been so lucky as a side musician. And so the other reaction I have to your question, what I hitch to one thing is, by the time you're playing for an artist who is on an arena tour for 9 months, that's all you're doing, man. Like that's your job. Right. You can't work for anybody else. So that's where I'm at right now, man. I have one contract right now and I'm so happy. This is what we work for years and years and years to try and manifest, is like a gig like this. And I feel really, really lucky to be doing it.
Oh, sweet. Good. So in researching, I watched your Drumeo lesson about backbeat fills, which is ace. But you mentioned like some celeb Nashville guys, like, and you kind of separated yourself from these drummers, your Rich Redmonds and all that. But what do you think separates those guys from everybody else? What is it those guys do as drummers that puts them in that position?
Man, interesting. You're talking about these fellas like Rich Redmond.
Yeah, and
okay.
I can't Jim Riley and these guys,
Okay, yeah, I remember that conversation. That's funny. That was going on Drumeo was 4 years ago now. And
really? Wow.
But like your memory can be false, sort of, and so I've learned like the more time that passes since I went on Drumeo, the more my own memory of it has distorted. But I do remember going in there thinking like, wow, Harry Myrie shouldn't be on Drumeo. I thought Drumeo was for Rich. I remember Rich Redmond being on there. I remember Jim Riley being on there, and I forget what other Nashville dudes have come across that thing, but I didn't think of myself as one of them. And I do remember being really intentional when I went in there of thinking like, yo, I'm not out here headlining stadiums. I wanted people to connect to me, not as when people see Rich, that rightfully they go like, wow, that's like, look at that stadium drummer who's been doing it his whole life and is playing for one of the most successful country artists of all time. And it's not by accident that he's doing that, right? He's not. I know. It's easy to tell ourselves the story like, oh wow, look at that guy. We're all doing the same thing. We're all just playing these drum beats, and then this guy gets lucky and plays for a big art. That's not what happened with Rich Redmond, dude. Like, talk about maximizing your opportunities or whatever. I was speaking a second ago in terms of 300 auditions. I bet Rich did 2,000. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like he just never said no to anything, and he'll tell you that himself. And so what we see on the outset of that is that he's just playing with Jason Aldean or something. But this is not by accident that that in his generation of drummers, like he blossomed on this like hella successful thing. And the other thing I've always noticed about Rich is that not all these drummers have in common is his ability to actually play the drums, his like as a craftsman, his true dedication to like having a deep relationship with his instrument is like sublime. You know, a certain style of play is called for when he plays with Aldine, but if you just happen to sit at drums with him outside of that gig and get him to play like Latin stuff or I don't know, you know, like play brushes or whatever, he's so deep as a musician, is like unbelievable. And I know that's hard to tell like on the surface because of the context that he gets presented in. But the point of all this is he is the best example I could give you of, number one, longevity, number two, absolute tenacity, like absolute refusal to let any opportunities slip through the cracks, and you know, dedicated to the instrument and all that. When I went to Drumeo though, I remember thinking, I'm not that. I didn't want people to connect to me that way. I wanted people to see me as like, I'm the guy sitting here eating frozen vegetables and you know, making $125 a night sometimes. And like, but look, I have a life that's working for me. So let me speak as that guy, not as like, here, follow me and you can go headline stadiums. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Right on.
But it's like there's something that happens with these guys that gets them from where you were at then to being on Jason Aldean. And I think it's something beyond tenacity. I think I don't know what it is. It's like they have a little bit of magic.
Yeah. Oh, dude, there's no doubt. And you can feel that when they're on the instrument. And the other, like the story I tell myself all the time now is the last ingredient, the most elusive one, is time. If you think of it like gardening the carrot, if a carrot needs 10 gallons, I don't know how much it needs. I'm not a fucking gardener. If a carrot needs 10 gallons of water in its lifetime to grow out of the ground, the way I operate is like, okay, well, let me get 10 gallons of water. I'll dump all 10 gallons on this carrot right now. And like, that's not, dude, you just have to water that thing a little bit every day for a long ass time. And that's how that fucking thing grows out of the ground. Wow, I've alienated all the kids with my terrible language. Sorry, man.
No, that's okay, man. It's all good. Keep going.
You dig what I'm saying about the carrot, though. And this is the story I tell myself. That may have more to do with me than with Rich, right? It's like, what do I focus on about that?
Well, I never wrote it down when I wrote the question, but I remember thinking at the time when I watched it, is it more than just time served? You know, because, you know, it can't just be time served, because if it was just time in, there would be tons of guys that aren't great out on big gigs because it's a time. You know what I mean? Because it's a time serve thing. You know,
you're totally right, and no one component that we can isolate here will be the entire story. And also, like, I have the honest answer I should have given you a long time ago is I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But I was sitting in therapy yesterday, and we were talking about something close to this sort of. And the word I could not stop saying was luck. I know that I can't speak for. Like, Rich would have to tell you himself, like, what his path was to that. But to do what I'm doing right now, which I am astounded by, I'm astoundingly grateful to be doing it. The only explanation I have been able to give to everybody that's wanted to talk to me about it is, like, absurd luck. Absolutely absurd luck. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. So you know, anybody that spends any time watching you play will realize that you've got quite a unique voice on the instrument, both the way you set it up, the way you play it. Is that something that you had to cultivate, or is it something that you've just always had?
I know what you mean. I've been noticing lately that the more people that recognize you, the more you become a caricature of yourself, right?
Right. Okay.
And so when kids bring signs to shows or stop me in the airport or whatever, or like, you know, I'll be sent, people will draw me and stuff. And what I always notice, like, what gets accentuated about, we have to simplify people down to like a couple of things, right? And so for me, it's dude, it's cowbell, it's the blazer. And definitely the thing that maybe you're asking about is like my drum setup is super back asswards. And so I have, like, these are the things that to me or to people in my personal life or whatever, we can mistakenly think, no, I'm a million different things. I have like lots of subtlety to me, but I recognize that to the sort of outer cloisters of people that know who I am, it's like a very small handful of those characteristics, and those things, to answer your question, like those have been in me before I could speak English, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Like, I just, dude has been the number one most used word of my life since before I even played the drums, man. Right. And likewise, I would say, how long have I been playing the drums? I've been playing drums is the year 2022. So I've been playing drums for 21 years.
Right.
Way, way more than half of that. Yeah, my setup has been that open-handed thing. It would be weirder to me to play like a normal drum set at this point in my life. And even the very first, I think maybe I've told this story before, but the very first time I ever sat down at a drum set, and there was a guy showing me, this is the hi-hat and this is the snare. And I put my left hand went to where the hat was. And my right hand went to where the snare was, because that's like what our body is reflecting when we sit at a drum kit. I realize that's not the case with the feet, but which is why we have this conflict in the first place. But I remember the dude correcting me. He grabbed me by the forearms. He's like, no, you cross them over. And I took his word for it, because it's like, you're an adult and you have 300 drum sets sitting here in this room, and you can play paradiddles really fast. But I'm glad it didn't. That's the last drum lesson I ever had, was the day we got a drum set for me, and I'm glad that it wore off. And I went, no, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm gonna play these the way my body is asking me. That was like totally natural to me. And the rest, if you're saying, which I totally appreciate and blows my mind, that I sound like me when I play the drums or whatever, totally comes from that thing.
Right.
It's impossible to have right-handed standard isms on the kit that I play, and I know that that's related to that. And same with my other weird little idiosyncrasies. I feel that they've just always been in there, and now my job is to not get in the way of them. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. The sort of thing that led me to that kind of question was that when I research people, I try and research them. So I'd like back to through your YouTube, and like some really early videos, you're playing some Carter stuff. And if you're anything like me, I grew up on grunge music. So like Jimmy Chamberlain is kind of the guy, right? And I have like modes of drumming, and I can go into that, and I can play that stuff, and I can cop that without even thinking about it. It's just kind of parked in a space in my brain, and I'll just go like JC, press it, and I'll play with heels up, eighths on the hats, broken right, all that shit. Wow. And I imagine you have that with Carter, where you have like, you can just pull out that hi-hat stuff if you want it, where the splashes are, and putting the splashes on those, and it's like, it's not even a thought. But then there's the guy that gets paid, right? There's a guy that does the sessions in Nashville, and he can't necessarily always pull that stuff out, but it's still part of the voice. Dude,
there's no doubt. We are all a kaleidoscope of, as it was put to me a few days ago, we were all a kaleidoscope of like all the experiences we've ever had. And so I relate so deeply to the thing you just said about Jimmy Chamberlain, dude. Even though I owned one Smashing Pumpkins record, but and so it's not like I'm not saying I can go there. I can't, but what you're saying about Carter, that's totally true. Like, I have downloaded his operating system into my brain, and so I'll be at their gigs sometimes. I've been to like 80 something of their shows. I'll be at their gigs sometimes, and a musical situation starts to well up, and I know as he's playing it, I know what he's going to do. But the other thing I have to say in the same breath is, and this is why I've been to 80 something shows, is the beautiful, amazing thing about that dude is every time I go see them, there still is a moment where I think I know what he's going to do, and he does something I've never heard him do in my life. I can't believe he still innovates on the instrument like that.
Yeah.
But
I have a whole section on this. I have like a whole section on this. I have a couple of other Nashville questions, but we'll dive deep.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this relates then to the last question. Did moving to Nashville change you as a player?
Oh, so much. I can't think of anything that's changed me more than moving to Nashville. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Did it simplify, or what did it do?
Yeah, I love that you asked me this, because I've never directly thought about it. But dude, this is so embarrassing to think about. When I first moved here, man, and I moved here, the first gig I ever got, fine. I think that went well. The second gig I ever got, sort of on top of that, on pretty short notice was like, hey man, will you come play for this country artist? I'm like, country music? I don't know what that is, but sure. And we were playing 4-hour sets in bars, dude. And so I had to it felt like I had 2 nights to learn that music or something like that. And it felt like it's not a fair way to do it, but in 2 nights I had to learn crammed into 40 songs, the essence of the entirety of country music at that time.
Right.
Plus a little bit of its history, right? And so it's not possible to get that in your DNA that quickly. And so I played it like me. I didn't play it like a country guy. I played it like me. I have footage of it. I brought a splash cymbal. I don't know if I'm kidding or not, but did I have a China cymbal too? I can't remember, but I know for a fact I had a splash cymbal and that I hit that thing. And nobody will tell you to your face not to do that. You just have to but I cannot believe when I think back on that I was doing that and that I didn't get fired. That's how desperate they were for a drummer. But I think how hard that blows my mind is partly a reflection of how this place is in me now. I do know the language of this music now. And splash cymbal is not in that fucking
no.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an example of what I mean.
Yeah, amazing. What's the most important thing you learned about when you moved there? Like, what has the town taught you musically more than anything else?
Yeah, and we're talking musically here, right?
Yeah, just like, because life is life. You learn whatever you go, but like,
totally.
Nashville's so massive within the sort of the grand scheme of music in general.
Totally. This is going to sound really trite, but I really do mean it, and it's the first thing that came to my mind. The spiritual thing that I learned here about music is that it's about the song. The thing that we're all trying to row the same way on is the song. Which is, that word is related to music, but is not necessarily music. You know what I'm saying? It's about the total combination of like the words and who's singing those words and what those words mean and the way it's sung and all that. And the drums should only ever enhance that. And I promise I did not understand that before I moved here. Because, dude, I came up on Blink 182, where now in hindsight, when I put it all together, I go, yeah, I actually think Travis is doing that too. And the way that you carry that song out is that's a different culture entirely. That's Southern California, super high adrenaline shit. And so the drums need to be expressive in that way. But the mistake that I made, and that I know I'm not the only one, is that I thought like, oh, Travis Barker is the most impressive drummer that I know, or Carter for that matter. And they wail all the time because that's what their music calls for. Therefore, that's what I should do on like everybody's thing. And I should bring a splash cymbal playing for Brinley Addington, you know. That's what I had to separate out. Dude, when you play for country music singers, dude, like you need to serve this song. I know a million people have said that, but I'm saying it from my heart right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's amazing how much the context gets overlooked. You read interviews with guys and it's like, it's grooves or chops. Like, it's just about grooves or chops. It's about so much more than
right
just
on.
that. And it must feel weird as well, because you could be playing music that is being sung by a human that didn't write those words. So you have to find a context for someone else through someone else.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, we are putting on a play for sure.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, that has become really apparent to me. I don't know if it's totally fair to say this, but it's just what comes to mind. One of my favorite tours I ever went on last year, I was playing with Lindsay L, and we toured with Blake Shelton all in the fall. And I think Blake is to my knowledge, I'm not sure that he writes songs necessarily. He's just like the ultimate singer. He's the ultimate mouthpiece for these songs to like manifest. So my friend Hardy, who I'm playing with now, wrote a bunch of Blake's hits. So I have Hardy's demos of like God's Country. That's one of the big songs, right? And so like I've heard what that sounds like coming from the dude who wrote it, and then I've heard what it sounds like when it's channeled through an artist like Blake Shelton, where it's like he didn't write that, but he is the best. He is, for whatever reason, the chosen
vehicle,
visual and cultural sort of representation of that song, and his job is to just sing it super good. But it is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's a huge difference between somebody wrote this and is singing it from right here, and somebody is a kick-ass singer and they're part of a massive machinery, and their piece of that machinery is that they're the singer of it. And so, you know, like in terms of the public, we think, yeah, that's that guy's song and he's singing it or whatever. But I think this dates back to Elvis, dude. I think Elvis was singing stuff he didn't write, right? But he was the perfect vehicle for the stuff that he was singing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like extended cover band weirdness.
Oh, dude, it is very much like that. And as this relates to the drums, I've never necessarily thought of it this way, but like the connection I'm feeling you make here is that that's what you're doing on the drums too. I don't play on most of these records. So I'm out here expressing things in the way that I express them naturally, but like definitely expressing something that somebody else said. Yeah. And I am a cover band musician in that way, that the drum parts I'm playing on the road right now were all created and recorded by Jerry Rowe. So he's in my playing too, and I gotta be mindful of his parts and all that, and then put top spin where I'm supposed to put top spin, but also honor his thing. So yeah, it is some melting pot of all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Weird. So Carter, I rewatched your video with Carter, and it's actually amazing. Because like I've interviewed a bunch of guys for this podcast now, but it was obvious that the value you've gained from Carter's influence is huge. And do you think that level of influence now is missing from young bucks coming up? Like they don't have a Carter in the way that you did. You every note of every album since 1993, something along those lines.
Yeah. The DMB started in 91, but the earliest like commercial recordings we have are 93.
Yeah.
If you're a real nerd, you can get tapes of them playing in 91, but it doesn't, they would admit to this too. It does not, they don't totally sound like they have it yet.
No, it's not the same. it's not the same.
But dude, that is, if you're at the right point in your life, it is inspiring to listen to those tapes. I know, like, when I first heard that stuff, I was like, wow, this sounds terrible, and I turned it off. And then like years later, when I was going through trying to make my own thing, and it was sounding terrible, when I heard, now when I hear those 91 recordings of them, I'm like, whoa, they were already them from the get-go. Like, yeah. It sounds totally different to me now. It's like, yeah, but more as like a historical document. Anyway, none of that is what you were asking me. That should be the title of this podcast. Is cool. There's the answer to what you didn't ask me, dude. So off the dome, my first reaction to what you just asked me is, because you're relating it to like, you know, is the current generation of up and coming drummers, like, are they missing the sort of depth of relationship that we had the opportunity to have with music when we were growing up? And it has crossed my mind that I guess my first reaction off the dome is like, I don't feel totally in touch with the mindset of like the current up and coming generation of musicians. I know I've been doing a lot of stuff with Little Kids Rock in the last year.
Okay.
I've been like donating drum sets to schools that don't have drum sets, and in the process of that, I'm meeting like a lot of these music student kids and like answering questions sometimes and hanging at schools and stuff. And I am constantly moved by how much I feel like one of them. I always feel more like internally, emotionally, I feel like way more of a 13-year-old than like an adult.
Right.
And so, yeah, some of my favorite, and probably emotionally in terms of my maturity, I'm a 13-year-old too. So like some of the most connective conversations I've had musically in the last year or two have been with guys and gals that are, it's all still ahead of them sort of. And they're wondering like, man, I love this. How am I going to make it work? And I do find that the level of obsession or the intensity of that heat is totally the same from what I remember it being when I was sitting in math class, not paying attention to math and thinking, brain fully dominated by music. So the heat feels equal, but I do know that these kids don't know what it feels like to hold a CD in their hand. And now I sound like old man yells at cloud. I'm really just trying to answer what you're asking me. It's not like I sit around thinking about this stuff or yelling at the clouds about it, but I know that I don't know if it's better or worse, but I do know that I feel so thankful that the first, let's say 10 records I ever listened to, I had to listen to them like 1,000 times each because that's all I had. I didn't have like on-demand music or anything. And so as a result of this, like, I know to the second. On my way here, I was listening to the Green Day album Nimrod from 1997. That was all I went on like a cruise as a kid, and all I had was that one CD. I left the rest of my CDs at home, and so that's all I could listen to. I spun that thing 5 times a day.
Wow.
And so I can, at the end of Redundant, Mike Dirnt on the bass, he doesn't realize it's still recording. He's done ringing out, and he screws around. He kind of scratches one of the strings and does like a little what would you call it? He just noodles a little bit. He can't help it. And it's at the very end of the fade out. You would have to crank it to hear it, but I know where it is to the second, and I know exactly what it sounds like. And what I've realized from recognizing that as I was driving here is that like all of about as much of the nuance as a human being can absorb from Nimrod, like it's in me. And that gives you different nutrients than hearing a million different songs one time. You know what I'm saying? And if I had to pick between the two, I would pick to hear one thing a million times rather than a million things one time. Yeah.
Yeah, because even the way that music is recorded and produced now, it's all like the same volume, dynamics are missing. There's like, I was talking to, what was I watching? Maybe something with Rick Beato. Do you watch Rick Beato?
I heard his name.
He's sensational. You should sensational. You lose days of your life on YouTube. He has a series called "What Makes This Song Great," where he tears a song apart. But I think he put on like "Everyone Wants to Rule the World," Tears for Fears, and they broke it down, and it's like something bonkers, like a minute and a half before the vocals come in. Like, can you imagine a song hitting the radio now where the vocals don't come in for like a minute and a half?
I know, man. Everything's in a super hurt. Everything has to like dominate your attention really quickly, or else it just doesn't exist. Yeah, I do. That to me is very real. I understand that that's where we are in the movement right now. I know that, but I'll tell you why I don't mind. We all have the opportunity to swim the other way. Nobody's actually stopping you from starting your vocal 90 seconds in. Does this mean that all these kids who watch things for 10 seconds at a time on Instagram are going to pass you up? Yeah, they are. They're not going to pay attention to your song. And I guess for me, the goal is like, all right, well, did you want their attention anyway? Or do you want to make stuff that you can't live without making? And so I know even I remember when I was making YouTube videos that there were best practices that suggested these should be shorter and there should be like more action more quickly. And I learned pretty early on, like, oh yeah, I see how that breeds a certain kind of success. You could super pump your numbers up of subscribers or views by making something that caters to that. But you're making choices that are going to affect your life. Like, you're choosing who your fans are when you do that. And the choice you're making is like, yeah, I want people with like short attention spans who value the fireworks. They don't value me. They don't value my character or my musical spirituality. They just like value flashing lights really quickly that just managed to outcompete all the other cat videos. Is like, dude, I'm so thankful that like in the drumming world, my village is probably in the scheme of things, pretty small. Like I don't have a good sense of that, but I know like my village is 100,000 people, whereas you have a place like Drumeo, that's, what is that, 1 million or 2 million or something? So I know I'm not a city, I'm a village, but like I've had the attitude for a long time, even since I had 1,000 subscribers, not even 100,000 subscribers, that if I can just take care of these 1,000 that like saw something in me and give a shit, and they like it enough, then if anybody else kind of sees out of the corner of their eye that this is happening and they want to come hang, then yeah, come hang. And that's how it's expanded to what it's at now. But I've had opportunities maybe to cash in on that momentum that all of us are feeling, that, man, you got to be fast and it has to be a bunch of stuff and the colors have to be bright and all that. And you got to stand for that every day. If you're going to stand for, no, I have something else to say, and it's 12 minutes. It's not 12 seconds.
Yeah.
I do have to push that boulder uphill mentally sometimes to stick to that. But in hindsight, I've like always been glad that I've done that. I do feel really like peaceful and still in my relationship with my work because of that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Right on.
When you were talking to Seamus, you were talking about Carter, and you said something really rad. When you were talking, you were mentioning about the minute of music that you played him, and you let him hear how his playing had evolved over all that time. And you said all he has is now. Where you're talking about like he's not thinking about anything else, which is like next level ability and mastery of his instrument and the music he's playing, because he can flip it any way he wants at any point, and he can play some of the hippest shit MD's ever heard. And like, bend your brain. How do you think he gets there, or how do you think a player gets to that point where that's all they have?
Dude, yeah, so back to, you were kind of asking me like how I'm kind of oversimplifying the question, but you were sort of asking me like, how did you become you? Did you do the math and cultivate that, or were you just born that way? From spending the amount of time I've spent with Carter in the last 3 years, I've been spending a ton of time with him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I can tell you with certainty, man, that like that dude has been the same guy forever. Like it's amazing as I've been kind of digging into their archives and sort of having access to what he was like as a musician in the 80s and then even like pre-Dave Matthews Band, like I've been talking to guys that were in bands with him in the 80s, like his band Secrets, or he had another band called Blue Indigo with Sal Segoyan, and these are guys I've had the opportunity to like talk to on the phone in the last year and like try and put together like, who is this dude and when did he deviate from humanity and become like the greatest to ever touch this instrument? Like that's the unanswerable question that I've been trying to answer. And I talked to Carter about it too. I grill him. I've sat up till like 3 a.m. with him before, really? just asking him like everything, and the later the night goes, the more like insane and real it can get, the more you can really be honest about stuff. And like the thing of all the, we could talk for 10 hours about this, but if I were to distill it down into one idea, it's like, man, that's in Carter's DNA. He's so unattached from what is the written history of this thing, how momentous is this gig or that gig or whatever. Every time he touches the drums is like spiritually equal to him, and it's now, and it has nothing to do with. But I know he understands that what happened that day to like raise his blood pressure or make him feel nice or whatever. Yes, that he's going to express that. That's going to come through his playing. He knows that. And he also knows that everything he's ever listened to contributes to that kaleidoscope. And I think one thing that's really unique about him is if I have 5 influences, if my kaleidoscope is basically 5 drummers and I sound like that plus that plus that plus that, he is like one of the greatest examples I know of. He's like 5,000. He's a kaleidoscope of 5,000 drummers. And I think the more influence you have, the more unique your kaleidoscope becomes, and the more difficult it is to dissect that. It's like, oh, that's Tony Williams, and he's told me now that Tony Williams is one of the ones. I know everybody knows that. He also was saying the fella from, he said it in that video that you're talking about, and now I can't remember the Return to Forever. Who played drums?
Lenny White.
Yes, Lenny White. He's like, and I was like, Lenny White? I've never heard of him. So then I went home and listened to Lenny White stuff, and I hear him going snare on 2 and then floor tom on 4. I go, oh, that's how Carter does number 41, and like the outro of Bartender and all this is like, oh, it came from Lenny White. But I can't detect that stuff. Carter is like, he's so full of all that stuff that he's managed to reach that unconscious, effortless state where he truly, in his conscious mind, he doesn't know where any of this stuff comes from. He just lived a lifetime of being a devout musician. And then when that breakdown of what would you say comes along, there literally nothing is happening in his brain. Like he is just doing it. I think that's the definition of like levitating. That's the definition of like Zen. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like they could put his face on the cover of Effortless Mastery. Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Totally. No, I was just like, because I've only seen them play. I think I've only seen them play twice. I've seen Dave acoustically, but I've only seen because they don't come over here all too often. But I remember the first time I saw them, they played Trouble from Dave's solo record.
Yeah.
And he played this fill-in to come in that just bent the fucking room round, man. Like, what is going on? And it's in 6/8, and he's like after like the second 8th note, nobody knows where beat 1 is except the band. And it's like, and he comes in and it's like, he can't, I guess what I'm trying to say is he can't ever be anything except himself, right?
Yeah.
Which is ultimately where we should all aim to be, is just be yourself. But he's been like that since 91.
Yeah.
And it's 2022. It's like you listen to every Dave record and he hasn't changed.
Yeah.
You can hear where producers have reined him in. Like you listen to Stand Up and you're just like, the producer's all over his case because he's behaving. You know, like he's been made to behave. He's not being allowed, and you listen to Every Day, and he's not being allowed to be Carter. Either the band have decided that they want to go down a slightly different road, or the producer's just like, nah, man, like, you know, and you kind of yearn to hear it. But you go see them live, and he's been the same guy forever.
Dude, amen. I know what you're talking about on stand-up. That producer basically like cut his drumming up and looped it sometimes, you know, like he was that guy, Mark Batson, he had like a real hip hop mentality, and that's sort of how they make hip hop records or whatever. I know what you're saying. And that makes it so much more amazing when then on the 2005 tour for stand up, they go out and play it live, and it's like, whoa, he's like slamming this stuff. I know what you mean. Even those Lily White records, when you hear the studio recording of Ants marching, it's so reined in, it's so polite or something. And then you go get the live version and it's just hammering.
Yeah, but it's just like, but his personality's still all over all of it. Even even when he is kind of sort of pulled in a bit, it's still unforgettably him. That snare drum sound, like the ghosties on the hats, and just like he'll play a tom fill with one hand. It's just like it's almost inaudible, but it's like right there, and the song's not the song without it. But then you'll go see him live and he doesn't play it, he plays something else, and it's just still the same. It's just it's really, really hard to wrap your head around. Yeah.
That's that thing of like I love that you said that because it perfectly clicks into perspective the thing I've been stumbling in the dark trying to say. One of my favorite things about Carter is it can drive you crazy or it can be a religious experience. He doesn't even know what he played on the record.
Yeah, right.
That like, absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for a while, I thought, no, because during the 2006 tour in Rapunzel, on the chorus, he quit going to the ride. He was doing it on the hats. He started doing that in 2006. And half of me thinks, I know he's had some problems with his left hand. It may have just been painful to do that or something, and he knew. But I'd watch him do that, and I would be trying to yell from the crowd, like, no, you go to the ride here. I was trying to like correct him. And now, from getting to know him, I'm like, dude, he doesn't know what he played on the record. Also, he doesn't give a shit what he played on the record because that's how they made this music in the first place. Is they're playing what's here now. They're playing what's in them right now, and like that's how. And so that can make you go. I know the fans have this thing they get into of like, oh no, why don't you guys go play back to number 40 or do the old lyrics or whatever? That's not how this band works. And so if you like what they make, then you got to follow them. Like. The way they make this stuff, which is be in the moment all the time. It's amazing. Yeah, it must be weird because with fans that size, there comes this weird thing where they think they have ownership. And I think I've seen this a lot. And when we put drum clinics on in the store, or people talk about celebs, like they have ownership of these people, forgetting that they're human beings, man. Like they might not, like the first time I got really hip to this was when I went to see Weckl do a clinic. And he started unveiling all this shit, like he has arthritis in his hands. He's a super light sleeper, like he has to change hotel room like 4 times before he's got to find the quietest room. And it's like, it's no one's fault. It's just how he is. He travels with his own pillow. Like, and that night we went to see him do clinic. It was after the clinic and the meet and greet before he ate his dinner. So he did like an entire day without feeding himself. And still played like a fucking superhuman monster. And you forget, it's really easy to forget. Like Carter could have gone on stage and like the catering could have been bad and he's still got to bring it. Like most of us get hangry and moody and like we go home like, oh, my lunch sucked. Well, these guys are playing in front of 100,000 people and still have to bring that energy, and he's still got that big smile on his face and he's blowing his bubble gum and he's like, and he's, do you know what I mean? He's still got all that ownership of that amazing facility, even whilst he's a human being. And the fans are like, you didn't play the fill-in correctly. Man, beautifully said. He would be the first to say, if he were sitting here with us in this conversation, he'd be the first to say, like, it doesn't matter who you are, man. Everybody has like shit going on in their life. There's like no doubt about that. And yeah, that's inspiring, dude, to connect to that human side of it, because this blows my mind about him. I love basketball. I went for the first time in my life 2 months ago. I got to sit at a basketball game like courtside next to the Utah Jazz bench. And there was this weird, like, it was very humanizing, dude, seeing that like those guys were breathing the same air and they like, they get distracted just like we get distracted or whatever. And, the thing that I could not unsee once I saw it is like, maybe this will sound trite, but it was like blowing my mind when it was happening. greatness is happening in the same world that you and I are sitting in right now. It's like I'm sitting right next to the jazz bench and watching them just dunk on each other like that right there. I could have reached out and interfered with the game if I wanted to. Like I was that close to it, and it was impossible to unsee that. Well, dude, these are human beings, and they're just being great in the same world that we're. And so being around Carter, like in their recording studio, when he's knocking off cobwebs or he's like kicking the rust off and like warming up and stuff, like watching him do that, like spending a couple of days with him in a studio like that and seeing him, be human and also at the same time be the greatest to ever do it was like so inspiring. It didn't make me, it was kind of this experience of, I didn't walk away thinking like, wow, he's a god, I could never do that. I actually walked away thinking like, dude, you can choose to be fucking great. Like we can just choose that. And Carter does that. Just like everyone who does it, like, Carter has to choose that in the face of all these things that work against you. Yeah, maybe you are tired or you don't feel, or something's happening or whatever. I'm not singling him out. It's like you're saying. I mean that about anybody. And he just does it anyway, dude. He just is great. I think that's like so much more amazing than the idea that he was just the son of Zeus or something.
Maybe he is the son of Zeus. Maybe that's actually,
probably,
maybe it's like, maybe he's a Cree or something.
It's probably both.
Yeah. All right. That was a big Carter loving because we all have big love for Carter. Your video on the sort of financial side of being a musician is obviously huge. What do you think it would take to change the way that musicians are paid and perceived?
Do you mean like
you're talking about like some artists are going to pay you in biscuits and tips and shit, you know, and it's like where does it come down to like, you know your worth. So why doesn't, and this person understands what it is to make music. So why am I getting paid? Why am I paying for parking to come and play your gig? Do you know what I'm saying?
I forgot about that. I remember having a bit. I don't remember which video anymore, but I remember saying, I think it was about the Cajon thing, that I'm getting paid $20 to play like the listening room or something, and I paid $40 to park there.
Yeah,
that's a real. You know, everything I wrote in those videos is like real.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so since I made that video about money, which I was so nervous to do, it was like a relief to put it out there and feel like a new conversation started in my life because of that video. And this has come up. The thing that you're asking me is like I've had to take some ownership of that question a little more. And by the way, it wasn't lost on me that when I made it, like I don't know anything about any of this stuff. Like all I could really contribute was like here's my little spreadsheet of money that I made, or lack thereof. But I have had to like confront this question that you're asking me a little more, and for whatever reason, my natural reaction to it has been, when I get asked like, okay, what is the state of financially how well we're taking care of musicians right now, and is that okay, or what can we do to make it more okay if it's not okay? And for some reason, where I sit with it is like, maybe the world I would like to live in is the one where any of us who are ever playing the drums ever are just doing it because we're glad to be doing it. And if we're not glad to be doing it, just don't do it. And right. And so if free food comes of that, or if $25 or $2,500 comes of sitting at the drums and doing that, then cool. But if that's the point, I quit. For me, it wouldn't be scalable. And so I don't remember ever getting paid $10 to play the drums and going like, man, I just got ripped off. I played so good and they only paid me $10. Like sometimes I've gone, holy shit, that was not worth it. Like I'm never doing that again. And I feel responsible for if that transaction's out of balance, it's because I said yes to it. Yeah. It's not because they should have paid me more money. I shouldn't have done it. And what bugs me a little bit about saying that so matter of fact is I think that is kind of unempathetic of me to say towards drummers that, you know, deserve to make a lot more than I ever made doing this stuff. I don't, man, I had a dark conversation with a dude yesterday who's like, he's trying real hard to get a gig right now. And he absolutely is a better drummer than me. And, he's got all these reasons in his head. It hasn't that people are ripping him off or whatever. And I was speechless in this conversation. I don't know what to say, because I agree. It's not fair. It's not fair that guy isn't getting paid shit to be better at the drums than I am. And I'm out here like, as soon as I was making more than the poverty line at all, I was like, I'm the richest person on the planet. Like, it felt like but you get what I'm saying. It felt like a spiritual richness, but
yeah, I mean, there's a UK based drummer called Craig Blundell. He's up there, and he played drums as a side hustle for like 15 years before he broke through, something crazy. But he was like, look, the reality of it is that if you get paid anything, if you can pay your bills playing music, you've made it. It doesn't matter what the gig is. If your whole life is paid for through this instrument, then you have made it. Now, what you have in your head as the vision of made it and the reality of made it are maybe wildly different. And you might not think you've made it until you're sitting at Madison Square Garden playing in front of 15,000 people. But the actual reality is, if you can buy like diapers or nappies for your kids and feed your wife and yourself by gigging, then you're already doing it. There's so many people that will come through here and moan about the choices they make. We have conversations with people, and it can get like, well, man, you're the one that chose to take it on. But there's also still an inherent value in one's ability, because, if you were an electrician or a plumber, you wouldn't fix someone's house for $10.
That's right.
So there's an inherent value in the skill set. So it's trying to balance it all.
Yeah, totally. I feel maybe it's just, maybe this comes from me trying to constantly have the attitude that if there's anything wrong in my world, it's my responsibility to make it right, or just
that's the truth, though, isn't it?
And so that's probably what reverts me to that space, sort of like, I'd feel the same way as an electrician, that if I fix somebody's electrical problems for $10, that it was my fault that I did that. It's my fault that I said yes to that or something. But God, it's so easy for me to sit here and say that because I'm not like starving right now, right? So I want to say that with a grain of salt of like, poverty in general is like incredibly complicated and terrible, and I have absolutely no ownership of the fact that I like can eat. I deserve zero of the glory for that. I think this is why people are like praise God or whatever the religion, it's like, because to me, like, it drives my brain to that point of like, this is happening to me. I didn't even do this. Like, it's amazing that I get to eat a $5 sandwich today instead of 20-cent vegetables. But that thing that you were saying a second ago of like, dude, if you're a damn rock star, if you can like keep your kids warm and sheltered and feed them and stuff, like you are just playing the drums, then you are fucking Bono. Like, that's what I'm talking about feeling like I'm the richest person on the planet. That's the thing I'm talking about. It's like, dude, when I got this, they gave me 10 days to prepare for this gig, which is a lot compared to like past situations I've been in. And I went to Kroger. I'm trying to think of the equivalent out there in like Glasgow, what the convenience store would be called, or the grocery store would be called.
Yeah, like Tesco or something,
Oh, Tesco. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. So I went to our local Tesco equivalent here, and I bought, I was just going to hole up in my drum room for 10 days. So I bought like a bunch of calories and bottles of water and stuff, and said like, I'm not going to leave my drum room for 10 days, and I'm going to super get in shape. The gig I'm doing right now, it has almost like a metal thing going on. It's a very athletic gig, and there's flame columns and stuff. You don't want to black out. You want to be like hydrated. You want to be in shape. Okay. So, I was in here like trying to get in shape and like rise to the challenge. And I bought all this food and stuff. And on my way out, there was a table in the front of this Kroger, and it was like, apply now. It's $9 an hour. And there were people crowded around the table getting applications and stuff. And I had like a meltdown in the parking lot, because that is so much more honest and important work. These dudes in Kroger, like, stocking the shelves and doing the cash registers and all that. It's like, that's so much more honest and important than the thing I was going to shut myself in the drum room and do. And they're going to have to do it for like a very long time to match what I'm sort of senselessly being given to work for 45 minutes a night. My tech puts my sticks in my hands at like 8:05, and then we go on at 8:10, and I act like a jackass for 45 minutes, and then we come off, and like that's all that's being asked of me right now. And I my brain is having like a terrible time understanding that.
Well, as any decent therapist will tell you, people need beauty as well as bread. So your work is no less honest. Because what it does is the people that are busting their gut to stack the shelves have come out and paid good money to see you. So it's real important, the work you're doing, because they get a great night away from their shit and away from what's happening to them. And I spend a lot. I know a lot of guys in the UK that play in the theatre game. So they spend their night under the stage in a box where nobody sees them. There's no glory in what there's no glory in what they do, but they understand that the person that's paid £120 for the front row ticket needs the best show of their life. And it might be the 800th show they've played, and they've played that same stab on that same tune at that same time every night, but they gotta own that, because they know that they've paid money for a babysitter. They've had to pay for parking. They've maybe taken their wife out for dinner as well. So there's like there's a whole thing around just 2 hours of their life, 3 hours of their life. They've maybe not done anything all day, but they gotta bring it.
I dig that, Chris. You're a very mindful guy. I'm noticing that from this conversation. Well,
I spent a lot of time on it, and I work with the public a lot, and you see the importance of it even in a store, man. We're as much as it's commerce, we're still selling things that people create art with, and that's really important. I had a young kid in recently who is just getting back into playing, and he'd bought like a second-hand drum set, and he was coming in for a head change, and we took the head off and his shell was cracked, and like he's going to play a gig, and he's like, the sort of the outcome of all was he had to buy a new snare drum because he couldn't use the drum he had, but he's so stoked about getting something brand new to go out and play this gig with, like in broadcast or whatever, to no one on a Tuesday night or something. And you start to see how valuable that is to people, because it gets them away from the dole drums, and it gets them away from feeling like shit because there's a war happening, and you know what I mean? And it's like it's important stuff. And I think musicians especially heavy themselves quite a lot because they think, I'm just playing music, but you're not just playing music, because there's thousands of people there that are dying to see you,
Dude, well, I will tell you that, I that's a very centering thing for you to say, and I will say this without a doubt. When I wake up the next morning after every show I do, I am in utter full body pain, like Mike Tyson beat my ass. I really do. I cannot remember. There were times in my life where I was phoning it in on stage, and I was resentful of what I was spending my time doing, and I think that's back to then don't take the gig. But I can tell you that for a while now, I'm a couple of years into a phase here where my neck, I kind of have a bangover right now. My neck sort of hurts having this conversation with you even. And I've had 2 or 3 days off. I haven't played a show in 2 or 3 days. But I am out there like giving 100% of the cells of my body to it. I am trying to honor the opportunity I've been given. There's no doubt about that.
Listen, man, it's been a pleasure, a real pleasure talking to you. I know that people will watch YouTube and they'll see the character, but there's just so much more depth there. And it's been really great to get to peel some of that away and talk drums and talk about Carter and all that. So I really appreciate you getting up early to come and do that, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
This is the most worth it my alarm going off at the crack of 11 a.m. it's ever been. Thank you, man.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks very much, man. And if you want to find out anything about Harry, just at Harry Miree anywhere on the internet, you will find it. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, it's all there. Some great content, some great videos, so check him out. Thanks for listening to this episode of Drummers Only Radio.
You can find us online at www.drummersonly.co.uk.
Drop us a line. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Drummers Only UK.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
Any questions? info@drummersonly.co.uk is the email, or if you need leads, it's leads@drummersonly.co.uk.
Thanks again for listening.
And we'll see you next time.